Welcome back to SnT Networks. In today's video, we'll be discussing yet another important part of network and network security, right? You can call it a device, a feature. Mostly, networks will implement it as a device, right? But you can call it as a device, as a feature. Multiple devices support load balancing. So, why are we moving into this space? Just like traditional routing was moved on to SD-WAN, right? And then the whole firewall basically was segregated into SASE, right? The whole network altogether. Why is load balancer important, right? So in every interview or every place you go to, right, they'll ask you this because they might have something called load balancing coming in. So what is a load balancer? A load balancer is a device or software application that distributes network or application traffic across multiple servers. It distributes in the distribution ensures optimal resource utilization, improved performance, and increased reliability. So this is the formal definition. Now we'll basically, break it bit by bit to understand why is load balancer important and why do we need it. Right. So traditionally, or you can say, how do we access servers? So you have three servers. Okay, one, two, and three. So you're a user sitting here and you're trying to access any application here. Okay. Now what happens? So this is the user. Now what happens? You try to access an application. So you follow a few steps, like you do a TCP plus SSL, and then using HTTPS, I'm sorry, you try to access the data. Okay. Now, here what happens is you're trying to access data through server one. Okay. You try to access data through server one, and it's basically flowing now. Okay. Now, behind the scene, what happens is you have a device here in between. It's a load balancer. Okay. Now, what the LB device or the load balancer will do is once it gets your request, okay, once you're trying to send a request here, it goes to the load balancer. Now, what the load balancer will do is it will initiate a request on your behalf to the server. So we'll name it as server SRV1. Okay. For now, we'll just talk about this one. So you try to request. Okay. And then it replies back, okay, I'm ready to make a connection. Cool. And then you get a reply back. Basically, this is the intermediator. So mostly what happens is if it were to be just a router or a default gateway, only the MAC address would be changing. But due to security concerns, what we do is we make sure that when you try to make a connection through the server. So usually what happens is we use SSL. I have talked about it in a different video. If you want to recap on SSL decryption and SSL inspection, okay, please go ahead and click on the I button. Okay, decryption. So what happens is using SSL decryption, the user will make a connection. Okay, basically for the server one, it gets a response back. Okay, but in the backend, what will happen is using natting as well, user will think it is basically connecting with the end server. Okay, but it is actually connecting with the load balancer, and in turn, the load balancer is making request for you in the backend. So now whatever packet comes from the server to the load balancer, okay, will be marked as its own by the load balancer and sent it to the user. How it happens? It happens through SSL decryption, wherein server there will be two SSL connections, one from the client to the load balancer, second from the server from the load balancer to the server. Okay, we'll mark this one. Okay. So since server has or the load balancer basically has both the keys, it has access to both the connections. It can basically manipulate the traffic, or it just changes its identity, adds its own certificate. Okay, there is a way how SSL decryption is done. So only it will allow the first SSL hello packet from the user to the server, and once the packet comes back from the server, the load balancer will change the certificate or digitally sign the certificate with its own. Okay, and you also have to add the certificate in the devices to make sure it is trusted. Okay, so server 1 certificate will be added in here. Okay, let me just change this thing. Server 1 certificate will be added in the load balancer, and load balancer certificate now will be added in. Okay, this is a certificate, and load balancer certificate will be added in the user, like described. So this is the way it works. Now, okay, this is how it intercepts traffic, but what exactly happens? Why do we need it? Why are we intercepting traffic? So this was the way of working. Now, why are we intercepting traffic to basically impose security policies? Okay, that is also fine. But why are we doing it? Now, let's get back to the basics. Why we are doing it is because when you raise a request from here to the load balancer, now you know the load balancer is making request on your behalf. Okay. So the first basic thing it will do is it will have sessions in the backend. Okay. You can also call it optimization. How it is optimization? Because or in F5 we call it one connect. Why it is called one connect? Because now the load balancer already has request for you in the backend. Okay. So it has request connection with this, and this, all three servers. Now when you make a request, the load balancer can consolidate all the requests and send it to the server and get you the data back. So it's quick. Okay. It's quick. Second, it has a using one connect itself. It has a way of using keep alive. So it knows that if for five corresponding keep alives, I'm not getting any reply back from the server one. What do I need to do? I need to mark it as on here. It's on the load balancer UI itself. You'll see it as you'll see an amber light called down. The server is down. So what it'll do? The next request or the next user, or if this user is basically needs some data, it'll send it to a different server to get that data. Okay. Also, so this were basic advanced. Right now, let's get back to the very basics. So it will make you a whole picture now. So the very basic is there's another user. Okay. So another user, another system. You try to make a request here. So first, you try to make a request here, and it went to this server, server one. The second user is also trying to make a request, request two. It went to different server. Why? Because on the load balancer itself, we have conditions, way of distributing traffic, like round robin, uh, load. Okay. Then you have ratio. Round robin, it's one by one. It first one here, second one here, third one here, fourth one here. Load depends on the load. Okay, that also it has a way of fetching. Then the ratio. Okay, let me just write it clearly. Why is ratio important? Ratio is important because okay, ratio is important because consider the server one is bigger and it can deal with 200 connections at a time. But server 2 is smaller. It can deal with only 50 connections. Right? Now the ratio is 4 is to 1. So for every 4 requests, so first one, second, third, fourth, after 4 requests are sent to server 1, the fifth request will be sent to server 2. So load balancer is such a smart device that it makes connections on your behalf. It makes sure that the no server is overwhelmed, right? It also makes sure it also has a way of basically checking the CPU, load, memory, and usage of each and every server. So it also has what do you call it? Health monitoring. So since it monitors the health, it also makes sure that no server is overwhelmed. So that is why we say that it increases reliability. Another thing that is very useful is it uses virtual IP. This is again very important. VIP we say it, web or virtual IP. Why does it use virtual IP? To access the load balancer or any server, on the load balancer itself, to access any server, it will give you a virtual IP. Okay, so you try to connect to a particular server using a particular port, IP and port. Okay, and then in the real server, backend will be this server, 1, 2, and 3. It'll basically get you mapped. You're a user, you're trying to connect to server, you don't know the real identity. That is where natting comes in. Correct. It's a way of natting itself, like I said previously. So you try to connect to the device. This is virtual IP. From virtual IP, it takes you to real IP. Okay, the natting happens. So this is basic working of a load balancer, but here it was sort of basic to advanced. Okay, I hope this was helpful. In next video, I'll bring a real load balancer and I'll show you exactly how it works. And I also might introduce some Ixia or some traffic generator to show you the real working of the real, real life scenarios basically. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you. If you have any questions, please do let me know in the comment box and I'll definitely reply back. Thank you.